There's something no one tells you about praying for money, and it's uncomfortable to admit. But it's real. Sometimes God stays silent. And that silence can mess with your mind in ways you weren't prepared for. It makes you question everything. Your faith, your discipline, even your worth. You start to feel like you're doing something wrong. Like maybe you're not praying hard enough or believing strong enough. Like maybe God is helping everyone else but somehow skipping you. You pray, you try again, you promise yourself you'll change. That you'll be more disciplined, more faithful, more consistent. But nothing around you seems to respond. The bills are still there, the numbers don't move. And that pressure in your chest doesn't go away. It actually gets heavier, and slowly, without even realizing it. A dangerous question starts forming inside your mind. One you don't even want to say out loud because it feels wrong. But it's there anyway. God, why not me? Why am I still in debt? Why does it feel like you're not answering me? Why does it seem like I'm stuck while others move forward? And if you've ever felt that, even just once, then this message is not random, because I asked that exact same question. In almost the same words, with the same frustration. And what God showed me after that changed everything I thought I understood about money, about faith, and about the way He actually works. But before we go any deeper, I want you to do something simple but powerful. Something honest, not perfect, just real. Go to the comments right now and type this. I'm tired of being in debt. Don't try to make it sound spiritual. Don't overthink it. Just write it as it is. Because the moment you admit where you are, is the moment something begins to shift inside you. And most people never reach that point. They keep pretending. They keep hiding behind faith without facing reality. But not you, not today. Because if you're still listening right now, it means something inside you is ready to change, and I want you to stay with me. Because what I'm about to share with you is not motivation. It's not another strategy, it's something deeper. Something that goes beyond numbers, beyond budgets, beyond everything you've tried before. And it all started one night when everything inside me finally broke. I remember sitting alone in my living room. No noise, no distractions, just me and a table covered in bills. Credit cards, overdue notices, emails I didn't even want to open anymore. I remember the silence in that room felt heavy, like it was pressing down on my chest, and my breathing felt shallow. Like my body was trying to keep me from panicking. And in that moment, I realized something that scared me more than the debt itself. It wasn't just about money anymore, it was about shame. It was about looking at your life and wondering how you ended up here, wondering how you worked so hard, tried to be responsible, made plans, sacrificed things you wanted, and still ended up drowning in numbers that made no sense. And maybe you know exactly what that feels like. That moment when you look at everything around you and think, this is not where I thought I would be. This is not the life I imagined, and that's where it gets dangerous. Because when you stay in that place long enough, you don't just lose money. You start losing perspective, you start believing lies. Lies like maybe this is your destiny, maybe you'll always struggle. Maybe freedom is for other people, but not for you. And that's exactly where I was sitting there, surrounded by evidence that things were not working. Feeling like every prayer I had made up to that point had gone unanswered. And for the first time in my life, I stopped trying to sound strong in front of God. I stopped trying to pray the right words. And I just said something real, something raw, something honest. God, I can't do this anymore. Please take over. And those words might sound simple, but they changed everything. Because up until that moment, I had been praying for solutions, but I had not surrendered control. And there is a difference, a big one. Because heaven does not respond to control the way it responds to surrender. And that night, something shifted. Not in my bank account, not in my situation, but inside me. And that's where everything actually begins. Because before anything changes around you, something has to change within you, and I didn't understand it at the time. But that moment of surrender was the first real step toward freedom. Not financial freedom at first, but something deeper. Something that most people skip completely. And that is exactly what I need you to understand before anything else. Asterisk, and that's where most people get it wrong. Because they think the breakthrough begins when the numbers change, when the money appears, when the debt disappears. But that's not how it works. The real shift begins long before anything visible happens. It starts in a place no one sees, inside your mind, inside your heart, inside the way you interpret your situation. And that's exactly what began happening to me after that night. Nothing around me had changed. The bills were still there. The deadlines were still real. The pressure had not magically disappeared. But something inside me was different. There was a strange calmness that didn't make sense. Like a quiet confidence that whispered, something has already started. And I couldn't explain it at the time, but now I understand it clearly. Because God was not fixing my situation first. He was correcting my perception. He was showing me something I had completely missed before, and it hit me in a way I will never forget. Debt doesn't start with money, it starts with a lie. A lie so subtle that most people never question it. The lie that everything depends on you. The lie that if you don't figure it out, no one will. The lie that your value is tied to your financial position. And once you believe that, you don't just carry debt. You carry pressure, anxiety, fear, and a constant sense that you are falling behind. And that's exactly how I had been living. Praying for miracles but still thinking like everything depended on my effort. Asking God for provision but still holding on to control, and that contradiction was exhausting me. Because you cannot experience peace while trying to control everything. And that's when something shifted even deeper. It wasn't a voice I heard with my ears, but it was clear enough that I knew it wasn't coming from me, and the message was simple. You were never meant to carry what only I can cancel, and when that hit me, it broke something inside me in the best possible way. Because I realized I had been carrying more than just financial weight. I had been carrying responsibility that was never mine to hold in the first place. And that's when I started seeing money differently, not as my source, but as a reflection. A reflection of trust, of fear, of decisions, of beliefs I didn't even know I had. And that realization led me to something even deeper. Something hidden in scripture that most people read but never actually apply. The idea of release. The idea that freedom is not just about receiving more, but about letting go of what you are holding on to. And this is where things get uncomfortable. Because everyone wants God to cancel their debt. But very few people are willing to release what they are still holding inside. Resentment, bitterness, regret, guilt, and I had all of that. I had resentment toward people who had taken advantage of me. I had frustration toward situations that didn't go the way I planned. I even had anger toward myself for decisions I knew I could have made differently. And I didn't realize how much that was affecting me until I started letting it go. Not all at once, not perfectly, but intentionally, one decision at a time. I chose to forgive people who had never apologized. I chose to release situations I could not change. I chose to stop replaying mistakes that were already in the past. And every time I did that, it felt like something heavy was being lifted off me. Like I was making space for something new. And that's when I understood something powerful. Forgiveness is not just emotional. It's spiritual. It's a form of release. And when you release, something begins to flow again. Because you cannot receive with closed hands. And most people are asking God to give them more while still holding tightly to everything that is weighing them down. And that's why nothing moves, not because God is not willing, but because there is no space for what He wants to do. And I know this might be hitting you right now. Because maybe you've been praying for financial breakthrough, but there are things inside you that you have not released yet. Things that you keep revisiting, things that keep draining your energy. And I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty. I'm saying this because this is exactly where the shift begins. not when everything around you changes, but when you decide to let go of what is holding you back internally. And the moment I started doing that, something began to align, not instantly, not dramatically, but steadily, like things were starting to move in a direction I had not experienced before. And I need you to stay with me here, because what came next is where everything started becoming real, where what began internally started showing up externally. And that's the part most people never reach, because they quit too early. They stop when they don't see immediate results. But what I'm about to share with you is what happens when you stay long enough in that place of trust, even when nothing seems to be changing yet. And this is where things started to change in a way I could no longer ignore. Because up until that point, everything had been internal. It was about mindset, about surrender, about releasing what I was holding on to. But then something began to happen on the outside, small at first, almost unnoticeable if you weren't paying attention, but consistent enough that I knew it wasn't random. And this is something I need you to understand clearly, because most people miss it. When God begins to move in your life, it doesn't always start with something big. It starts with movement, subtle shifts, moments that feel like coincidences but are actually confirmations. And that's exactly what began happening to me within days of that night. I started noticing things I would have ignored before. An old client reached out unexpectedly and insisted on paying for work that had been forgotten. A refund appeared from a situation I had already given up on. Small discounts, unexpected help, little things that didn't seem significant on their own. But together they created a pattern, and that pattern was clear. Something was moving, something was aligning. And I remember thinking, this is different, this is not luck. This is not random timing, this is something intentional. And the more I paid attention, the more I realized something powerful. Miracles don't always arrive loudly, they accumulate quietly. They build over time, one piece at a time, until you can no longer deny that something greater is happening. And that realization changed the way I looked at everything. Because instead of waiting for one big breakthrough, I started recognizing the small ones that were already happening. And that alone strengthened my faith in a way I had never experienced before. But here's where it gets real, because just as things started moving forward, something else showed up: resistance, doubt, unexpected pressure. Bills that appeared out of nowhere, situations that made it look like nothing had actually changed. And that's where most people lose it. That's where they say, see, nothing is working. This was just coincidence, and I almost fell into that trap too. I almost went back to the same mindset, the same fear, the same pressure. But this time something was different. This time I didn't react the same way. Instead of panicking, I paused. Instead of assuming the worst, I chose to trust what had already begun. And that decision, that moment of choosing faith over fear, is what changed everything, because I realized something most people never understand. Faith is not proven when things go right. It's proven when everything looks the same, but you refuse to go back to fear. And from that point forward, I made a decision. I would no longer wait for the result to believe. I would believe before I saw anything change, and that shifted everything. I started speaking differently, thinking differently, even responding differently to situations that used to stress me out. Every time I saw a bill, instead of feeling pressure, I would remind myself, this is not the end of the story. Every time doubt tried to come in, I would replace it with a simple thought. Something has already started, and I just need to stay aligned with it. And then it happened, the moment I will never forget. I remember opening an email with a subject line I had seen many times before: balance update. And normally that would trigger anxiety instantly. But this time there was a strange calmness, like something inside me already knew. And when I opened it, I saw 3 words that didn't make sense at first: paid in full. I stared at the screen, trying to process what I was looking at, thinking maybe it was an error, maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it wasn't real, so I checked again. And it was still there, paid in full. A debt I had been carrying for years. Gone, no warning, no explanation, just cleared. And I remember sitting there in silence, not even reacting immediately. Because my mind was trying to catch up with what had just happened. And then it hit me, not as excitement, but as something deeper, relief, peace, confirmation. And I knew in that moment, this was not something I could have created on my own. This was not the result of a strategy. This was the result of something I had stepped into, something I had aligned with. And what made it even more powerful is that it didn't stop there. More things started to happen. Accounts being adjusted, opportunities opening. Doors I had not even knocked on starting to open in ways that felt perfectly timed. And that's when I understood something that completely changed my perspective. God does not just fix your situation, He repositions your life. He doesn't just remove what is holding you back, He moves you into something new. Something aligned with who you are supposed to become. And that's why this is not just about money. It was never just about debt, it was about transformation. It was about becoming someone who no longer lives in fear, someone who no longer depends on control, someone who understands that provision is not something you chase. It's something you align with, and I need you to hear this clearly, because this might be exactly where you are right now. You might not have seen your breakthrough yet. You might still be in the middle of the pressure, still dealing with the same numbers, the same situation. But that does not mean nothing is happening. It just means you are in the phase where everything is being prepared. And if you stay long enough, if you don't go back to fear, if you don't quit in the middle of the process, you will start to see what has already begun internally show up externally. And what comes next is even deeper, because once everything shifted for me, I realized something that most people completely miss. Freedom is not the end of the story. It's actually the beginning of something much bigger. Asterisk. And this is where everything took a turn I never expected. Because once the pressure was gone and things started to stabilize, I thought that was the end of the story. I thought the goal was to finally feel relief, to breathe again, to live without that constant weight. But what I discovered next changed everything in a completely different way, because freedom is not the destination. It's the starting point, and most people never realize this. They spend so much time trying to escape the problem that when they finally do, they don't know what comes next, and that's exactly where I found myself. No longer overwhelmed, no longer stuck in the same cycle, but asking a new question, now what? And that question led me into something deeper than I had ever experienced before. Because instead of focusing on what I had been released from, I started focusing on what I had been released for, and that shift is everything. Because when you stop asking God to fix your situation and start asking Him to use your life, everything changes, your perspective changes. Your decisions change, even the way you handle money changes. And that's when I understood something that most people never talk about. Provision is not just about receiving, it's about becoming a channel. It's about allowing what flows into your life to flow through your life. And the moment I started living that way, something incredible happened, not just externally, but internally. There was a level of peace that I had never experienced before. A sense of clarity, a confidence that was not tied to numbers or circumstances. And I realized that real wealth is not measured by what you have, but by what you are able to release without fear. And that led me into a completely different way of living. One where giving was no longer a loss, it was alignment. Where helping others was not an obligation. It was a natural response to what I had experienced. And I began to notice something powerful. The more I operated from that place, the more things continued to align in ways I could not have planned. Opportunities appeared, connections were made. Doors opened without me forcing anything. And it felt like everything was moving with a kind of flow that I had never known before. And that's when it became clear to me. God was not just changing my finances, He was changing my identity. He was showing me that I was no longer someone trying to survive. I was someone positioned to serve. And that is a completely different way of living. And maybe this is the part you need to hear right now. Because maybe you've been asking God to fix your situation, to remove the pressure, to cancel the debt. But what if there is something bigger on the other side of that? What if your breakthrough is not just about you? What if it's about who you are becoming and who you will impact because of it? And if you're still here listening right now, it means something inside you is already shifting. It means you are not just hearing this. You are recognizing it. And before we finish, I want to take a moment with you. Not to talk about money, not to talk about strategy, but to do something that changes everything at the root. I want us to pray, not from a place of desperation, but from a place of surrender. So wherever you are right now, if you can, take a deep breath and just focus for a moment. Because this is not about saying perfect words. This is about opening your heart, and if you're ready, repeat this in your own way as you listen. God, I'm tired of carrying what I was never meant to carry. I'm tired of trying to control everything. I'm tired of feeling like it all depends on me. Today I let go. I release the pressure. I release the fear. I release the weight I've been holding for so long. And I give it to you, not partially, not conditionally, but completely. I trust that you are able to do what I cannot do. I trust that you are working even when I don't see it. And I choose to believe that my situation is not permanent. That what I'm going through right now is not the end of my story, but the beginning of something new. Change my mindset, change my perspective. Teach me how to live from trust instead of fear, from peace instead of pressure, and from alignment instead of control. And if there is anything in me that I need to release, show me. Give me the strength to let it go. Because I am ready to step into something different. Not just financially, but completely. And from this moment forward, I will no longer define myself by what I see, but by what you have already started. And if you felt something shift as you listened to this, even slightly, that's not coincidence. That's confirmation. And I want you to seal this moment with something simple. Go to the comments and write this: God is changing my story. Don't write it because it sounds good. Write it because you are choosing to believe it. And as you do, understand this: your situation may not have changed yet, but you have, and that is where everything begins. Because once you change, everything around you eventually follows. And if this message connected with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, because you never know who is at the exact point you were in, waiting for something like this to show up. And remember this: you are not behind. You are not forgotten, and you are not stuck. You are in the middle of a shift, and what started inside you today is going to show up in your life sooner than you think. This is Messiah Speaks, and your story is just getting started.